Hi guys, this is Disruptive Wealth Creation. My name's Steve. I'd like to welcome Manos from Money, Whiskey and Coffee. I think I got that right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great stuff. So welcome for the second time.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. We spoke about robotics on the previous occasion, and today we're going to be talking about 3D printing, and then we're going to have one more session, and that will be about artificial intelligence. Right, so let's get into it. So 3D printing, what actually is a 3D printing machine? Can you explain what that means?
So let's look at a normal printer that we have. We are printing in 2 dimensions, basically. A 3D printer just stacks material on top of another in layers, and that gives us a 3-dimensional geometry at the end of the process. There are a few different methods of 3D printing, like stereolithography, fusion deposition modeling, selective laser sintering. There are at least 10 that I can think of from the top of my head now.
Sure.
And it's different it is different compared to traditional manufacturing techniques. Because in traditional manufacturing, what you would do is you would start with a large chunk of material, usually metal or wood, and you would start taking material away until you reach your desired geometry. This was done either manually, so the machinist or the carpenter would have a drawing on a piece of paper, and they would choose the appropriate course of action, or it can be computer driven, like with CNC machining. However, with 3D printing, everything starts with a digital file that's created on a computer. It can be done either with simple software tools or very, how can I say, or specialized software called the computer-aided design software that engineers use to design parts.
Because I remember watching a video, and it was an interesting one, and it was about building a house using 3D printing, and I could see that this big printer, instead of ink coming out of the machine, it was actually a kind of material, and it was being sort of laid layer upon layer upon layer, and then I saw the wall rise, and it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible, and because I could never have thought in a million years you could actually build a house out of 3D printing. It just didn't seem right or imaginable, but obviously it can be done. So that's great. Now, just thinking ahead, I mean, can you think of any other applications where you would use 3D printing? Because I've seen something to do with food and science and astronomy, and there's so many things. Can you maybe give us some examples?
Examples. So if you've ever bought a phone or a mouse or a games console, a car in the last few years, either it has 3D printed parts in them. This product has 3D printed parts, or some parts were 3D printed initially in order to test for fit and function and the form, if it's nice, if it's ergonomically correct. And this actually reduces time to market, because it's much quicker to get a prototype, test it, and say, okay, that's good. We can now invest in full production for this part. Because investing in molds and tooling for production parts is really, really expensive. So with 3D printing, we can make sure that we get it right first time. And any changes we want to make, we can make those changes really quickly. Also, as a real world example now, Airbus is using a lot of 3D printed parts on their airplanes, and the reason is that 3D printed parts are lighter, so they save on fuel, basically. They can be more space efficient, so they can take less space. Again, that reduces weight and material. Or you can make parts that in one go, that otherwise you would need to make several parts, weld them together. So you're saving on production as well. So that has cost savings on the final product, the airplane, and also has operation savings. You're consuming less fuel.
I mean, I also read about like in food, you have restaurants where they make pizzas with the toppings, which is quite funny, or they have lots of sort of creations in hotels where they make specially designed cakes and things. So on the food, that's quite interesting. And then looking further, you might know more about this to do with hospitals, and do they do that kind of stuff, 3D printing with stuff like that?
Yes. So on the medical side, obviously now with COVID, a lot of personal protective equipment was 3D printed. And this has to do that it's much quicker to 3D print plastic parts compared to doing the traditional way, which you have to create a mold, which takes time and it's really expensive and has a limited lifespan. And then start creating parts. With 3D printing, you can do that almost immediately in a decentralized way. So you can have multiple locations doing the same thing, printing the same file, printing the same, essentially making the same part. So it's really quickly. Also, a UK-based company called Renishaw. On the medical side, they are 3D printing bone implants that are used in facial reconstruction surgery. They're made of titanium, and they are made to fit a specific patients. So if a patient has a broken cheekbone and they need a replacement, the doctors can give the measurements to Renishaw. Renishaw can 3D print the part out of titanium, and the patient can have facial reconstructive surgery and carry on their lives.
Oh, wow, that's incredible. I mean, I know that in the future, they're looking at replacement parts like the heart and things like that, but that may well be a way off. Am I correct in saying that?
I don't know. I'm not a biomedical engineer or a doctor.
No, that's fine.
I really don't know what the what the limitations are there, but that would be one of the holy grails of 3D printing, because we could then, in theory, 3D print parts. Sorry, not parts, organs for a specific patient. So we could probably reduce or even eliminate the chance of the organism rejecting the actual organ.
Okay, great. So if I was a 3D enthusiast and I said, I really want to get into 3D printing, could I actually go to Amazon and buy a 3D printing machine? Would that be possible?
Yeah, and if you have Prime membership, you can get it tomorrow. So, 3D printers start from as little as £90, I guess, I'd hazard a guess. And they can go all the way up to several thousands of pounds, depending on how serious you are. Obviously, the build quality of the 3D printer itself increases with cost, and also the quality of the parts that you'll get out of the 3D printer increases. You get more functionality, you get a larger build envelope. A small 3D printer, you could probably create only very small parts. And the other barrier to entry, let's say, is you need to learn how to design parts, which is not so difficult to do. And then your imagination is probably your only limit. I've seen people make simple stuff like toys. I've seen people make replacement parts for products they had that had a plastic gear that broke, and they couldn't get a replacement. They were able to 3D print one. Save them from throwing away a perfectly working product. I've seen people 3D printing wallets for credit cards. I mean, your imagination
it's endless.
is
Okay, so if you were somebody that wanted, say, to invest in 3D printing, because obviously you've mentioned a couple of companies, maybe you can mention them again. Which companies would you want to be looking at for an investment as a shareholder?
Well, there are quite a lot of companies out there. Most of the companies that are listed are in the industrial sector. So I would be looking at companies like Strataysys, which they mainly do polymers. I would be looking at companies like Xone. They make metal parts for automotive and aerospace industries. They also 3D print sand molds, which are used for casting, for metal casting. I would be looking at Renishaw. They 3D print metal parts. They also make a lot of other products as well for a lot of industrial sectors. It's a UK-based company. I will be looking at Nndm. It's a company that 3D prints electronic circuitry.
I think that's one that you, sorry to interrupt, I think that's one that you actually have just recently done a video on in
I have actually done reviews of all of those companies. Other companies to look at are 3D Systems Corp. They also 3D print plastics and metals. Desktop Metal is another company to look for. There are two companies that are not public yet, but are going public soon, Velo 3D and Markforged. And also there's a 3D printing ETF from ARC as well, if you want to have if you want to have exposure to all of those companies at once.
Wow, that's fantastic. Right, well, that's really great. So obviously we've got the names now, we can check those out. And if we want more information, we can look on your channel, because, you know, you have quite a few disruptive companies, 3D and other companies. So we can do that. So that's been really great insight into 3D printing. And I appreciate you coming on the channel and sharing that with you. So
thank you for having me.
Not at all. So we've got one more to go. And obviously I'll let our viewers know when that comes along, possibly in a week or maybe 2's time.